This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
Red flags are easy to spot in hindsight, but sometimes they're waving in real time. Professors warned about Kohberger. Classmates sensed it. There were whispers about his awkwardness, his aggression, his lack of empathy. One professor even said it out loud. If we give this guy a PhD, we're going to hear about him assaulting people someday. That wasn't hindsight. That was foresight. Ignored. But what do you do with that sort of foresight, that sort of information, when a crime has not yet been committed? Are you really ignoring it, or are your hands really just tied? Nothing has been done yet. You just get the icks from this guy, and you know what's going to happen. But that's the world we live in. And then there's the fox in the henhouse angle. Kohberger wasn't just looking out at serial killers. He was trying to get inside the system. He applied for an internship with Pullman Police. Was that about career advancement, or was it about planting himself where he could both gather intel and feed his darker impulses? We've seen it before, monsters who put themselves in positions of trust, disguising their pathology as ambition. And then there's his family, hours of calls to mother after the murders, desperate for comfort, desperate for connection. A father who once turned him in for stealing, who drove him cross-country, but didn't show up for sentencing. The family dynamic here isn't just strained, it's revealing. The need for comfort, the dominant struggles, the lines drawn and erased. Jennifer Coffindaffer joining us to dive into all of it. The ignored warnings, the Pullman Police application, the family ties and fractures. Because if we want to understand how someone like Kohberger gets to this point, we can't just look at the crime. We have to look at the scaffolding, the red flags, the ambitions, the relationships that formed the foundation. So, Jennifer, when you hear the professor saying, this guy is a predator in the making, what does it tell you? Were the red flags always there? Or do we only see them clearly now that it's far too late? Let's get into it.
So I've never been one that's believed ever that this was, and I know people have said this, I'm not sure where it comes from, that he was just, a PhD student and he was going to see if he could get away with the crime. This, I don't know how strong I can state that I think that is absolute malarkey. The people that buzz with that. This was so vicious and so deep-seated and so evil. This was no accident. I think he 100% meant to go in there and murder. I think he enjoyed it. I think he reveled in it. I can almost see him like gutturally banging his chest afterwards. That's how I see it. This was absolute euphoric for him. That's what I think.
What I'm wondering about that, though, is he didn't expect. I don't know that he expected all these people to be there. I mean, let me ask you. I agree with you. And with that being the fact, I mean, in my brain, when it almost is like a cinematic scene. I keep picturing the shocked Bryan look, the big eyes, like, oh shit, like, and then having to quickly move. But the amount of angst and hate and everything that he felt towards women like this, attractive, successful, they got their life going on, they have friends, they're everyone that he can't have by his own actions. And then you also have, Xana's boyfriend as well, Ethan, who was there. I'm wondering how much of this murder and how crazily this thing went was more spur of the moment. Maybe one was a target, maybe one was the intent to kill. But I'm wondering how much of this got fueled by his rage, by suddenly there's other people here interrupting what he thought was going to be, an essay and maybe his first sexual experience. And I put that in air quotes. That's not a sexual experience, obviously, but I'm guessing he was probably a virgin. And I'm guessing that he, in his sick, horrible way, was going to think he was going to get some sort of enjoyment out of that control of an SA. And I'm just wondering how much of it was just, he literally, the rage, cap just popped, and he would decided, I'm just going to take out all these people who represent everything that I can't have and can't be. And that's what made this thing the horrific, horrific scene that it was.
Well, when you think this is a logical guy from the standpoint of he did surveillance, he planned.
Yeah.
I think he had it all together. So Tony, he looks out there at his site he's going to hit, and he sees all these cars.
Yeah.
So first of all, he has to understand that there are people connected with those cars. So I don't think he thought just one person was in there. And I think he was prepared that he might have to kill more.
Yeah.
He also intersected, not interacted, but intersected. He knew about that DoorDash. Mm-hmm. They passed each other. So he knew about the DoorDash. He knew what lights were on. Mm-hmm. So I think he knew, and I think it was exciting to him that he could have trouble, that it wasn't going to go perfectly. I think when he attacked Maddie in that bed, I don't think he had any idea that Kaylee was going to be in there.
Yeah. And
I do think that enraged him. And then, he was ready to wage war against anybody else who got in the way of him getting away. And that's how I think.
That's my point on the rage, where it's like just one, because he spent so much time seemingly scoping this out and in his mind, he's so smart. He's going to do this. It's going to be smooth sailing. I don't know that he would have gone in had he known the high probability of getting caught with that many people in there. That's what gets me about it, is if he wanted to be this sleuthy killer that was going to go and get away with things, he did a horrible job at it. These other killers that he studied, they had their targets. They went in, they went out, they got away with it. This was such... If he spent a minute or two outside of his brain and in the rest of the world, looking things beyond his blinders and seeing those other cars there and realizing there's probably other people in that house, I wonder if he would have gone in, or if he was just so, tonight's the night I'm doing this. I don't care if anybody's there. I'm going to take control and I'm going to do this. And then that rage overrode anything else in him that would have said, maybe you want to wait till the odds of you getting caught go down dramatically.
Yeah, I agree with you that definitely the rage and the emotional side of it seemed to take over, because it wouldn't logically make sense to go into that house. But look at the, one he studied possibly the most is Ted Bundy, mm-hmm. and that he was like the most in terms of how he operated, likely Ted Bundy from a psychological standpoint. And so if you look at that, he went into the Sigma Chi or the Omega Chi. Mm-hmm. No, Chi Omega, sorry. Yeah. Getting my houses mixed up. The Chi Omega house with all those girls in there.
Yeah.
And without any fear. And, he studied that.
That's true.
He knows all about that. And I think he was willing to go from, instead of starting out as a fledgling guy, he went for broke. That's mm-hmm. for sure.
Let's talk about some of the earlier red flags that were going on in the world of Bryan Kohberger. One of them I want to talk about that really got to me was the professor that was speaking candidly to other professors, and I'm just paraphrasing here. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was something to the effect of, if we give this guy a doctorate, we're going to hear about him essaying people and just basically being a menace to society. He saw it early on. I feel, I don't know. When I read that, I read it on the air today, and I said, if I met Kohberger early on, I probably would have said the same thing, and people would have been like, oh, you're being too harsh. I'm wondering if, what your take is on that, what that was like when that took place, what the others, I wonder what they thought of someone making that bold of a statement about someone who had not committed any crimes up to that point that we know of. I mean, those are pretty harsh things to say, that you think this person is capable of essaying people, and the other horrible things that were said about Kohberger all turned out to be accurate, but quite bold statements.
Bold statements, but in hindsight, Tony.
Yeah.
That's what kills me, when people, all of a sudden come back and say, see, I could tell. My hat goes off to Catherine Ramsland.
Yeah.
At least she was totally honest and said, "Oh my gosh, I taught him in 4 classes, and I was his counselor, and I didn't know."
Yeah.
And I think she was speaking really honestly. I think it's easy for people now to come back and say, "Oh yeah, boy, I could tell you that was a serial killer in the making," after what's happened. But I just think most people don't even have the bandwidth in their brain to think of people who act creepy or weird ever having this capability. It is so very rare. So I guess I would say anybody can say anything in hindsight.
Well, this wasn't said in hindsight. This was written. This is part of all those documents that have come out. This was a statement that was made prior to the murders. It was, Kohberger is smart enough that in 4 years, we will have to give him a PhD. Mark my word, I work with predators. If we give him a PhD, that's the guy that in many years, when he is a professor, we will hear about harassing, stalking, and essaying. That's a pretty...
Apology. What was the date of that? What was the date of his statement?
I don't have the date. I don't have the date in front of me, but it was early on. It was when they were starting to consider, like, maybe this guy shouldn't be in this program.
Apologies. I thought you were referring to something different.
No. Yeah, I don't have the date in front of me on it, but it was prior to the murders taking place. So, yeah, I mean, armchair quarterbacking it later certainly is easy to do, but it seems like others certainly got the vibe out of him and certainly expressed it in a way, shape, or form. But again, you can't do anything other than somebody's going, I got, spidey sense for serial killers and assayers. But if they haven't done anything yet, you can't do anything about it. That's the scary thing about Kohberger. This person called it, but I mean, you could probably call a lot of people that actually never end up acting out.
Well, I tell you, I want to take a class by him.
Yeah. No, I would too.
Seems like he's very intuitive.
Yeah.
Anybody who pointed that out, because, when I watched early on, remember when they would release the different car stops? Mm-hmm. We saw the Indiana car stops, 2 of them, and then we saw at least one of them that came out long ago, not the most recent one. And, really tried to evaluate him in there. And you could make a lot of conclusions that he was awkward, that he was very in control, that he was disrespectful of his father, basically, shutting his father up, that with the woman, he just was fighting the whole time.
Yeah.
She'd say X, he'd say Y, and they'd go back and forth. It just seemed to me that he was not respectful of her. So there were a lot of conclusions you could make just about him generally. Yeah. But like you said, to call somebody out as a future essayer, that's really insightful. And I would love to hear him go deeper into that, like the specifics.
I would too.
What did Kohberger say, or
what
did Kohberger do?
I'd love to see more of the email. We just got the excerpt in there in one of those reports, and that's what we have. Another thing that Kohberger, obviously, we knew about this. He was trying to get into the police program. He wasn't always looking outward at serial killers. He was trying to move inward into the system itself. Months before the murders, he applied to be a research assistant with the Pullman Police. Early on, we're like, okay, well, he's in the criminal justice system. This isn't in the program, not a crazy idea that he's going to want to get into that program. Sure. Do you think part of Kohberger's original bigger plan, and I guess this would also go back to how big of a plan was he planning? Was he planning on who he was going to murder, when he was going to murder, when he bought the knife all those months earlier, and what was in his mindset when he applied to this program with the Pullman Police? Do you think he was trying to get in there to try and steer the direction of any investigation that might come about of his future actions? Do you think he was thinking that far ahead?
Oh, I think he was thinking further ahead, but not in that slant.
No.
I think he was thinking about, how can I get information on girls? How can I pose as a police officer or be a police officer and more easily be able to attack girls? How can I have all this information? I'll be able to know where other units are. what's happening. I mean, talk about, I'll compare this to a case that you're very close to, the Devil's Den case.
Yeah.
That guy, I look at that guy and I think that guy planned this for years, getting his education in elementary education, teaching 5th grade and below only, right? Yeah. That's what he wanted to do. Yeah. He planned to put himself, we talked about foxes earlier, the fox into the hen house. He planted himself there and was willing to spend years getting the proper education to plant himself there, right? And I think the same with Bryan Kohberger. He was ready and prepared to be an officer to facilitate his ill deeds. That's how I look at it.
And that you got to wonder about that a little bit. Do they have the patience to do that, to go into something years in advance, and the ultimate goal is to go and commit these murders? I wonder about that. Or, it is the fox hiding in the hen house, or does the fox get into the hen house and somehow discover, I have a likeness to some of these really horrible things that, we know are horrible, that no one else in this world would approve of other than very monstrous people. Maybe I am a monster. That's what I wonder about with some of these folks. Do they just become comfortable with being monsters? And then after a while, they strike? Because it's hard to think that someone goes into this 4 or 5 years early and the ultimate goal is to go murder a bunch of people. I wonder if it was starting out in a more pure intent, maybe confused intent because they didn't know who they were, what they were really into, or are they literally setting out going 5 years down the road after I get my education, after I get into this setting, whether it be a school setting like Andrew McGann or Kohberger here in the education area in law enforcement, or trying to get into law enforcement, if the opinion changes or the desires change midway through?
Tony, I'm convinced these people are absolute monsters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then they get the education to make it easier on them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that sort of develops. I think people who can do monstrous act, that it's so deep, and it's who they are from very early. So I think McGann, to be able to do that, he was asking grade schoolers, to marry him, or I wish I could marry you. This is a guy that was his goal, I think.
Yeah.
And I find it very analogous to Bryan Kohberger. When you look at his education, a lot of people want to say, well, he got the education, and as a part of that, he committed these horrible crimes. No, he wanted to commit these horrible crimes and got the education to make him better at it.
We've also learned about the phone calls that Kohberger was making to his mom, the very long calls, all, right in the morning. And I know people have been going, well, there's the time difference. Okay, there's the time difference. It was still more than 3 hours of phone calls, right after murders were committed. It did make it a little stranger to think that it's a 6 a.m. phone call in Pennsylvania. But it wasn't, when we look at the time differences, it was for Kohberger. But what do you make of these phone calls and these conversations that he had with mom? In no way, shape, or form do I think he was telling mom, hey, I just killed all these people. But what the heck do you think was going on in those conversations?
I think two things. First of all, when he's going back, to the 9:30, I think it was, he returns right in that time frame, and he calls. I think she is his safe place. She's his Linus blanket. He finds comfort and strength through that relationship with her. And so I think that was that call. Because I don't think he knew what he was going to confront. I think he wanted and expected there to be police crawling and everything. I think he had hoped nobody was there and he'd see a knife sheath on the corner. But that didn't work out for him.
Yeah.
But the other call, And I know you have kids. I have kids that just graduated from college a couple of years ago. These exact same age of these kids, and they call you when things happen all the time.
Sure.
And that's how I picture this. I picture this call of him being happier than he's ever been, him just sunny side up, and wanting to share that with his mom.
What stays with me from that last part of the conversation isn't just the crime, it's the framework around it. The warnings ignored, the system he tried to infiltrate, the family he leaned on for comfort and control. It's a reminder that killers don't emerge in a vacuum. They build, brick by brick, out of early behavior, unchecked impulses, and overlooked signs. Maybe that's the hardest truth. Professors saw it. Classmates felt it. His father even acted on it once, turning him in for that. Even when driving out to Washington to drop his son off, and before going out for a little bite to eat, talking to a neighbor. Hey, you know, my son's a little shy. Yeah, maybe be buddies with him. What could possibly go wrong? I'm going to go back to Pennsylvania. He was a dad doing what he thought was best. I'm not blaming Dad. But he knew his son was off. Sure, he did not see him as this off. But what do you do in that situation? Kohberger's an adult and still hadn't taken on the maturity of one by his mid to late 20s. Until someone crosses the line into violence, we are stuck with suspicion, not evidence. And by the time the evidence arrives, it's already too late. The family dynamic adds another layer. A mother he clung to, a father he pushed away, a household that tried but couldn't contain him. In the end, even they fractured under the weight of his crimes. His father absent from the sentencing, his mother left tethered to phone calls that now sound like landlines from a killer searching for comfort. So as we close this out, here's what I take away. Kohberger's story isn't just about one night in Moscow. It's about the red flags we miss, the systems predators exploit, the families who can't see or can't stop, the monsters in their midst. It's about the uncomfortable truth that sometimes we do see it coming, and we still can't stop it. And that's why conversations like this matter, not to glorify, but to dissect, to understand, and maybe, just maybe, to catch the next one before it happens. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. If you're not already on our YouTube channel, just search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know your thoughts on all of that. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a completely different idea? I'd love to hear it in those comments. And please do hit subscribe. We do greatly, greatly appreciate that. You won't miss any of our coverage on this case and the many that we cover for you right here at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. My name's Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.